Coming up on Global Business, China's key economic data, including investment, retail and services, shows strong recovery in April, with employment also showing improvement. U.S. President Joe Biden is set to meet with congressional leaders on the debt ceiling issue later today. And China prepares to host leaders from 5 Central Asian nations this week in Xi'an for a regional economic conference. From CGTN headquarters in Beijing, this is Global Business. I'm Zhu Junfeng in Beijing. And China's economy maintained steady recovery in April, and the services sector and market sales witnessed growth. That's according to officials from the National Bureau of Statistics. CGTN's Gao Ang has more details.
In April, China's index of services production increased by 13.5% year-on-year as the sector continued to recover.
国内需求持续扩大，市场销售较快增长。
Domestic demand continued to expand. Market sales grew rapidly. With the early recovery consumption sinks, residents' consumption propensity has gradually increased. Especially the service consumption has improved significantly.
In April, the total value added of industrial enterprises above a designated size grew by 5.6% year-on-year. In terms of products, the output of new energy vehicles and solar cells went up by 85% and 69% year-on-year respectively.
外贸韧性的持续显现。
The resilience of foreign trade continued to emerge. Although the international situation is complicated and severe, the policy stabilizing foreign trade continues to be effective. Foreign trade economic entities are actively expanding the international market, and economic and trade exchanges with countries along the Belt and Road continue to expand.
Officials said employment was generally stable, and the urban surveyed unemployment rate went down in April. Boosting the digital economy, green transition, innovation, and promoting investments in manufacturing were also discussed. While China's economy has sustained the momentum of recovery, officials said that we must give full play to the effectiveness of policies, boost the vitality of business entities, expand demand, and accelerate modernization of the industrial system to pursue high-quality development. Gao Ang, CGTN, Beijing.
Latest economic data also shows an uptick in the headline figures for investment and retail sales. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, fixed asset investment grew by 4.7% in the first 4 months of the year from a year ago. The expansion was attributed to the high-tech industry, which saw a nearly 15% jump during the period. Investment in the infrastructure and manufacturing sectors both saw steady growth, but that in the property sector dropped 6.4% from January to April. In the meantime, retail sales, which is a gauge of consumption, jumped 18.4% in April from last year. That number was up sharply from a 10.6% increase in March. The increase was buoyed by car purchases and restaurant dining spending. According to the Spring Economic Forecast report released by the European Commission, China is expected to be the fastest growing economy in the world. The report projects that China's GDP growth will reach 5.5%, up from the 4.5% forecast in the previous outlook published in the fall of last year. The report also forecast China's GDP growth to hit 4.7% a year earlier. The global GDP growth is projected to be 3.1% this year, an increase to 3.3% in 2024. The Chinese government has unveiled a new plan aimed at easing labor pressure and supporting young workers. The official plan will introduce 100 new apprenticeship job positions targeted at graduates and students between ages of 16 to 24, along with subsidies for companies that employ more young workers. Officials are optimistic that the overall employment situation will remain stable as the economy continues to recover thanks to these measures.
Haichuangyuan, an innovative entrepreneurship base located in Hangzhou, is known as the dream factory of talents returning from overseas. It focuses on the introduction of high-end talents and supports R&D projects of entrepreneurs. As one of the many overseas high-level talent entrepreneurs, Chen Jianjun returned to China from the United States in 2015 and set up his company in Haichuangyuan with 3 other partners.
当时我们是2015年来创业的。
When I first returned to China in 2015,
Haichuangyuan had just come up, and they were actively recruiting entrepreneurial teams, especially high-tech and biomedical startups. What's more, since the technology giant Alibaba's headquarters is nearby, it has a great advantage for us to recruit internet talent.
Meanwhile, as an international talent entrepreneurship platform, Haichuangyuan has been constantly exploring new channels and new ways to attract young talents.
Nowadays, nearly 60% of the talents in Hangzhou work in the fields of digital economy and health sectors, which happens to be the two dominant industries of Haichuangyuan. For us, it is easier to recruit relevant talents here, and more importantly, Haichuangyuan provides rich subsidies for entrepreneurs.
With the continuous development of China's policies for encouraging talent, Haichuangyuan, listed as one of the 4 major science and technology industrial parks in the country, will keep improving the training of talent skills in order to create a better innovation and entrepreneurship platform for high-level talents. Olivia He, CGTN, Hangzhou City in Zhejiang Province.
Foreign investors are doubling down on China market as the country continues to open wider to the world. Global steel major ArcelorMittal has said it will continue to expand investment in China and remains fully committed to the world's second largest market. Our Hou Jing spoke to a senior executive of the company to get his thoughts on the firm's future strategy in the country. Take a listen.
The world is undergoing a massive transformation in decarbonization and energy transition. And no market is further ahead than China. In fact, China leads in many aspects of the energy transition and in the production of green electric vehicles. So ArcelorMittal, as a global steel supplier, and in fact the #1 global steel supplier to the automotive industry, is spending an awful lot of R&D on coming up with the best solutions. And we're really proud that our facility in Vama is completing its phase 2, and we will be bringing more than 20 new product solutions to the Chinese market, to our great automotive customers, to enable them to achieve their goals at building the most efficient and safest battery electric vehicles. We believe strongly in the China market, and that's why we're supporting significantly our Vama joint venture.
And China's been stepping up its carbon peak and carbon neutrality efforts. Could you tell us a bit about the steps taken by ArcelorMittal to promote carbon neutrality, and how will the zero carbon mission impact the auto industry?
We've already set goals for 2030, and that is to reduce our emissions by 25%. And we've also set the goal for net carbon emissions, net zero, by 2050. First and foremost, that we must transform the steelmaking process to eliminate the carbon fuels that we use and use green energies. The second is that energy transformation, and that involves a number of ways of using electricity and hydrogen in the future steelmaking processes. The third is increased use of scrap. Today, there's only enough scrap to supply about 30% of the global steelmaking needs, but we see that scrap will increase, and we will find ways to use more scrap. The fourth key point is about sourcing clean electricity. And the fifth and final effort that we have is the offsetting of residual emissions. So again, at ArcelorMittal, we believe there's 2 critical things we must do for the future, and we're focused on both. 1 is greening our own operations, and 2 is delivering green solutions for our customers.
You're watching Global Business. Coming up next. US President Joe Biden is set to meet congressional leaders on the debt ceiling issue later today.
Xi'an, starting point of the ancient Silk Road.
A city where the rich tapestry of its past
blends seamlessly with the vibrant pulse of modernity.
The China Central Asia Summit takes place right here, celebrating decades of friendship and taking the Belt and Road Initiative to the next level.
We show you where cooperation is headed and how a shared future is being built.
U.S. President Joe Biden is expected to meet with top 4 congressional leaders on the debt ceiling issue later today, with time running out to reach a deal to avert a default on the nation's debt. John Terrett joins us. Now, John, another round of debt talks. We've heard so much about this in the last few days. What may happen today?
Hello, June Fung. Well, the meeting takes place in about 6 hours' time at 19 hours GMT. It'll be at the White House. Don't expect too much progress, though. Of course, it follows a meeting last Tuesday. I was on the program a week ago telling you all about it. There was no progress at that meeting. And they were due to meet last Friday as well at the White House, but all sides agreed to postpone the meeting because there was no progress. Now, they've been meeting over the weekend and over the last couple of sort of hours or so. My understanding is that there still has been very little, if any, progress. Now, the stars of today's meeting will be, as they were a week ago today, President Joe Biden and the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, who is effectively the leader of the Republican Party at this time. Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, issued a letter to the Congress last night in which she said, look, this deadline of June the 1st, when the U.S. will technically run out of money, is very real, and you should come to a deal by June 1st and preferably before June 1st. She said time is running out. Now, Wall Street, June Fong, where I am now, just around the corner from the New York Stock Exchange, where I will be later today for us. Wall Street, many of the investors there tell me that they're sidelined at the moment, waiting to see what decision finally comes out of Washington, D.C. Joe Biden, the president, is optimistic, he says, but, and it's a very big but, you have to remember that tomorrow, Wednesday, he leaves on an 8-day Asian tour. He's going to the G7 leaders meeting in Hiroshima in Japan. He's going to Papua New Guinea, a very rare historical visit, and he's also going to Australia. And he won't be back, if he goes, he won't be back until a week on Thursday. And I don't think they're going to come to a deal today, Tuesday. Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker of the House, says that he's very fearful because there has been no progress. He also calls on President Biden to focus, by which he means don't go to Asia, stay here and sort this one out. As I've said several times already, they will meet in 6 hours' time. The chances of a deal, I think, today are slim. June Fong.
But is a default really likely? Because I did some study in the history. Since 1917, the U.S. lawmakers raised debt ceiling over 100 times. Why can't they decide on the debt? Because it's a game that they play all the time, right?
No, you're absolutely right. Good for you, because you're quite right. And in fact, during the Trump administration, they raised the debt ceiling without any question. Why did they do that? Because at the time, there was no political capital to be gained by either side. It was kind of building up to the COVID era, towards the end of it anyway, of course, and the problems they needed to spend the money, because the reason the debt ceiling is now at more than $31 trillion is because about $8 trillion of that was President Trump's tax cuts for the rich, and about $4 trillion was added by President Biden because of COVID-19. So both political parties are liable. The reason they won't come to a deal today is that they've got another 16 days to bash each other on television. Remember, from the Republican perspective, this is all about stopping Joe Biden being elected in 2024. And you're quite right. In 2013, and more importantly in 2011, we had this same situation. They took it right down to the wire. In the end, they did a deal, but the US credit rating was downgraded and the stocks in America fell very, very heavily. Now, finally and briefly, Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, is calling for a new system to stop this happening. President Trump, who's still the Republican front runner for the 2024 election, says we may actually have to have a default after all. I think, as you quite rightly identified, that they will come to a deal. It's a question, June Fong, of which side, Republican or Democrat, actually says what they will actually do first. And I don't think that'll be today.
Right. Until they get at least some part of what they want. I see. This is more political than it's economical. Thank you so much.
Quite right. Thank you.
John Terrett for us in New York. Recent failures of Silicon Valley Bank SVB in the U.S. have raised concerns over the impact on Chinese financial institutions. However, according to the latest quarterly monetary policy report from the People's Bank of China, risk exposure of those institutions is minimal and any potential impact can be effectively controlled within China. The central bank's report also revealed that 90% of China's banking institutions remain stable, with ongoing efforts in place to strengthen financial stability and prevent systemic risks. For more discussions on U.S. debt ceiling and other issues pertaining to the U.S. economy, we're joined by John Gong, Vice President of Research and Study and of Strategy at the University of International Business and Economics. So, Professor John, what are the potential outcomes of the U.S. debt ceiling crisis, and how might it impact the global financial market?
Thank you for having me first, Junfeng. I totally agree with the previous conversation that somehow they will reach an agreement. This type of agreement is always reached at the 11th hour. It's a matter of give and take. Both sides seem to take a hard position, hardball, politics, but at the end of the day, they will reach an agreement. I think it's very clear that the Democrats want to address the debt issue from the perspective of raising revenues. The BOP said no, and they want to cut spending they want to slash the budget for the federal agencies. My feeling is that they will reach somewhere in between. This is if you look at the content of this negotiation, it's actually very broad. It covers a broad range of issues regarding the future taxation, the future expenditures, the issue regarding the student loans, the whole range of issues. And on each one of them, both sides can give and take. So I think there's plenty of room for negotiation. And in the time clock of a politician, 16 days is probably a fairly long time. So I think I'm still very confident that they will reach some kind of agreement.
Let's talk about the banking industry. Are there still potential risks in the U.S. banking industry? Some people talk about small, medium-sized banks are still exposed. Can we still lay our worries down?
If you look at the course of the failures of the previous several banks, it's almost all invariably related to the raising of interest rates. It's the bond yields dropping that's causing the value of these firms' portfolios to drop. So I think if you ask this question about future bankruptcies, I think the most likely scenario is the result of raising interest rates further. But this is actually a tricky question. We see that the inflation data is coming to close to a fairly reasonable range, an acceptable range. Latest statistic is 4.9, 0.1% better than expectation. So we are in the United States economy currently is in the 4% territory. It's very close to a range of being very acceptable. So the question about whether Fed is going to further raise interest rate, it's hard to predict in my view. But one thing we can say is that we are actually very close to the cycle of interest rate hikes. I think if the Fed continues to raise, it will be no more than one time or maybe 2 times, twice at most. So my prediction is that the risk coming from that angle facing the banking industry in the United States seems to be dissipating. But I think the issue we were just talking about, the issue about potential Uncle Sam defaulting. If that happens, God knows what's going to happen. It's just going to be a shock, sending shockwaves to the banking industry in the United States. And my guess is that it might affect a few banks that are not financially sound. That may happen, but even that probability is pretty low in my view. As I said, I think they're going to reach an agreement.
Thank you so much, Professor John Gong, for us from Tel Aviv in Israel. Let's move on to other business news that we're tracking at this hour. UK-based mobile operator Vodafone has announced its biggest job cut in history, axing 11,000 positions. The decision was made by new chief executive Margherita Della Valle, as cash revenue is forecast to drop significantly this year. Tencent Music, a major music streaming platform in China, saw its revenue rising and beating forecasts in the first quarter of this year, driven by strong growth in paying users. Meanwhile, revenue of China's tech company Baidu, which owns the country's leading search engine, rose to $4.5 billion, higher than expected, thanks to booming advertising sales. You're watching Global Business. More stories to come. China prepares to host leaders from 5 Central Asian nations this week in Xi'an for a regional economic conference.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global Business. Only on CGTN.
Welcome back. Presidents of Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan and Uzbekistan are set to pay state visits to China from today to Friday. The president of Tajikistan arrived in Beijing hours ago. The heads of state of the 5 Central Asian countries will attend the summit, which is scheduled to open on Thursday in the northwest Chinese city of Xi'an. The summit will be the first major diplomatic event that China hosts this year. It's also the first in-person summit among the heads of the 6 countries over the 31 years since China established relations with these countries. China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson says the upcoming China-Central Asia Summit will provide a new platform and open a new chapter for cooperation among the 6 participating countries.
In September 2013, President Xi Jinping proposed the joint construction of the Silk Road Economic Belt Initiative in a speech in Kazakhstan. So Central Asia is where the Belt and Road Initiative was first proposed and the benchmark of interconnection. Over the past decade, President Xi Jinping has maintained close contact with the heads of 5 Central Asian countries, drawn in person a grand blueprint for the high-quality joint construction of the BRI, reached an important consensus on promoting the docking of the BRI with the development strategies of the 5 Central Asian countries, and played a strategic leadership role in providing a platform for China and Central Asian countries to work together to build the Belt and Road. Last year, the total trade volume between China and the 5 Central Asian countries exceeded a record high of $70 billion. Solid and substantial cooperation results have laid a solid foundation for China and Central Asian countries to adhere to mutual respect, good neighborliness and friendship, and to work together for mutual benefit.
Connecting China with Central Asian countries, the China-Europe freight train has emerged as a key channel for trade exchanges and opened up a new era of cooperation. Su Xinbo brings us this story.
At Xi'an International Port, 261 Shanxi-made new energy vehicles were loaded onto the Chang'an freight train, which is now slowly making its way towards Tashkent, the capital city of Uzbekistan. The 18-day journey is just one example of how the China-Europe freight trains are facilitating regular exports of China's new energy vehicles, forging a major international logistic channel and helping to expand China's auto sales overseas.
The commodity carried by Chang'an freight train has transformed from primary products such as general merchandise to higher value-added products such as NEVs. More and more made-in-China products are being shipped to central China via Chang'an.
By the end of 2022, more than 65,000 freight trains have been launched between China and Europe, with nearly 80% of them going through Central Asia. Leaving China with its electrical products and textiles, they come back with high-quality agricultural products such as soybeans from Central Asia countries. With the acceleration of serious connectivity projects including the Western China, Western European International Expressway, and the China-Kyrgyzstan-Uzbekistan Highway, the transportation and logistic potential of Central Asia has been further expanded.
We have been promoting such exchanges in transportation and logistics between Uzbekistan and China. This is a potential for the development of both our countries.
Digital technology and other innovative models have significantly enhanced logistic and trade cooperation between China and Central Asia. A real-time data exchange program enables freight trains to update information simultaneously from China's Lianyungang Logistics Center to a port 4,000 kilometers away in Khorgos, Kazakhstan, improving efficiency by over 50%. With this success, China and Central Asia now aim to expand their digital cooperation in various transportation and logistic aspects. Su Xinbo, CGTN, Beijing.
The aviation sector between China and Central Asian nations is also witnessing a flurry of activity as a number of flights has resumed from January to May. According to China's Civil Aviation Administration, flights from China's Xi'an to 5 countries of Central Asia will return to full normalcy, which will facilitate bilateral cooperation. In the meantime, China and its counterparts are preparing to sign an MOU to jointly develop an Air Silk Road in order to strengthen cooperation in the aviation sector. China currently operates 10 airlines between the two regions. Officials are encouraging companies to add more flights in the future. This year marks the 31st anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between China and 5 Central Asian countries, including Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan. Since the establishment of diplomatic relations, economic and trade cooperation between the two sides has deepened and developed strongly.
Over the past 3 decades, trade between China and the 5 Central Asian countries increased by over 100 times. According to China's Ministry of Commerce, China's trade with the 5 Central Asian countries increased 22% year-on-year in the first 2 months of 2023, maintaining a strong momentum of development. Statistics show in 2022, China's trade with the 5 Central Asian countries reached a record high of over $70 billion. Same year, China's imports of agricultural products, energy products, and mineral products from Central Asian countries increased by over 50% year-on-year. Meanwhile, China's export of mechanical and electrical products to Central Asian countries increased by 42% year-on-year. By the end of 2022, China's direct investment in the 5 Central Asian countries reached nearly $15 billion. China and the 5 Central Asian countries jointly implemented a number of cooperation projects, covering fields such as oil and gas mining, manufacturing, interconnection, and digital technology, which have brought tangible benefits to the local people.
For more on China Central Asia ties, Su Zhiqian spoke to some Kazakhstan residents to get their views. Take a listen.
You know, I like China, particularly our Chinese partners, and their approach to business. First of all, they never lose opportunities. They always make 100% use of their opportunities. I also love their accuracy in terms of business. I think we have a lot to learn from the Chinese people in general. So we are working with Chinese. So many views coincide, which also makes work easier.
China was one of the countries that care for itself very much. This is a country in general that I think many countries should follow their example. I know that our country is introducing a visa-free regime with China. I think this would be good because the Chinese will have the opportunities to create jobs in Kazakhstan. As well, citizens of Kazakhstan will also have opportunities to travel and study in China, which is very popular here.
I believe that China is a huge market, and the agricultural industry is developing very well in Kazakhstan. So everything that Kazakh farmers produce can absolutely be exported, and only China can consume everything that our farmers grow, not only in agriculture but also other industries such as engineering and so on. Therefore, China is, of course, a huge market for us and can become a driver for the development of all sectors of the Kazakh economy.
Thanks for watching this edition of Global Business. I'm Dujin Feng. See you again.